Welcome, everybody. John Zager. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's 11:59, 12 o'clock. Here in the eastern slope of Colorado. Pretty nice day. Pretty clear. 81 degrees. And there's some clouds building out to the west. I heard somebody say there was going to be some pretty heavy rain showers later this afternoon. I'm not sure about that, but what do I know? Been up, doing a lot of stuff today, actually. And got some information for you today. You know, we're kind of leaning... Yeah, that's a good word to use. We're leaning more towards the emotional side of self-healing and, the emotions and stuff. Drinking lemon water today, iced lemon water. It's very, very good. And so today I thought I'd give you kind of a little, I don't know, maybe you guys know most of this stuff. A little bit of the brain and how the brain works in regards to emotions and which parts of the brain do what. Not a long podcast this morning, or I guess it's this afternoon now, but just some facts about, the emotions in the brain. I guess I find that kind of interesting stuff when you look at what regulates what and which emotions. The limbic system, as I'm sure you guys all know, is the main system in the brain that has to do with emotions, right? Fear, love, anger, just regular stuff like that. The limbic system is kind of comprised of several different parts of the brain. But it's located in the front part of your head, your forehead area, the temporal lobe. And it's kind of made up of, like I said, multiple parts. The amygdala, I can never pronounce that word really well. Amygdala, there you go. Is kind of the center of emotional processing in the limbic system, right? And it has to do with, kind of specifically, emotions regarding love, fear, anger, sexual desire. So those emotions get processed through the amygdala of the limbic system. And they did research. This is the part that kind of fascinates me. They do research on rats and mice and whatnot. They can't do this on people, but they do it on small rodents and stuff. And if that area of your brain has overstimulation, and again, they take a rat and, they overstimulate that part of the rat's brain. And it causes excessive reactions to those emotions. So excess reaction with sexual desire, with anger, with fear, with love. And again, when I read this research, they usually just pin it down to certain ones, although they're not saying it pertains to the other emotions, but I'm fairly certain it probably does. Because it goes on to say with the excessive stimulation of the amygdala, you become aggressive. Now think about that. I understand that's kind of research stuff that you read, but think about that. How often have you gotten aggressive, I guess it would be rage, with your anger? What about your sexual desires? How often or when does that, or has it ever occurred, that your sexual desire has become aggressive? What about your fear? What about love? Where it becomes exaggerated, aggressive, forceful. And then they go ahead and they remove, the amygdala from the rats, and it causes indifference. In other words, the emotional reactions with love, fear, anger, sexual desire just become totally indifferent. Right? So that's one area, the amygdala, that they talk about in the limbic system. The limbic system is the part of your brain that has these other subcategories that all interact and communicate amongst each other in regards to your emotional state and how your emotions are portrayed. Okay, so a second part of the limbic system is the hippocampus, right? You've heard that. And it communicates information, right, through the amygdala that has to do with memories with emotions. Okay, so a little more sophisticated now. Take a better listen to that. Okay, so the hippocampus is another part of the limbic system. This is actually the second. And its job is to communicate information to the amygdala that has to do with memories with emotions. Or, instead of saying memories with emotions, you might say traumatic memories. So how often or when last did you have any traumatic emotions? Right? Those are pretty severe. Where you're traumatized by some event in your life. Sexual abuse is a traumatic event, and that's how it gets filtered through your brain and how it's processed. Only the traumatic memories go through the hippocampus. When you're sitting around the house, for instance, and let's say you experience some traumatic event that produced some traumatic emotions years and years ago or whenever in the past, and you're sitting here on the couch, and all of a sudden that surfaces from the hippocampus that's communicated to the amygdala within the limbic system. Okay? Another third part of the limbic system, and this one you guys hear a fair amount about, the prefrontal cortex. That's this big, huge part of the front of your head. And it has to do with your everyday thinking and decision making. So it's what we're using right now. When you're listening to me, when I'm talking to you, we're using our prefrontal cortex, and we're dealing with decision making. Now, where it gets into the emotions at is it's the result or the responses regarding emotions of decisions. Let me say that again real slow. So your prefrontal cortex has to do with decision making, but it also specifically has to do with the type of response you give out based on decisions that have been made that entail emotions. So you make a decision. It may be a good one, bad one, happy one, sad one, anxious one, aggressive one. You know, it could be a loving decision. It could be a fearful decision. You see what I'm saying? So it has to do with regulating those emotions based on the decisions that you made. Anxiety would be a real common one. Depression would be another one. So you make a decision, right? Prefrontal cortex, part of the limbic system. What regulates how much turns into anxiety and or depression is processed through the prefrontal cortex. That's the third part of your limbic system. All right. The fourth part of the limbic system. This is one whole aspect of your brain, more towards the middle to the front, okay, that has to do with and processes all of your emotions. And we're going through each part and what its job is in regards to the emotions, okay? The fourth one is the hypothalamus, right? Another one you've heard, part of the limbic system, fairly common word. And it regulates desire sexually. So the limbic system has to do with the desire, sexual desire that we have. We all have sexual desires, blah, blah, blah. And for the most part, they're all pretty much norm, standard, right? But the hypothalamus regulates the sexual desire and pleasure, whether it's above norm or below norm. Does that make sense? You guys follow me on that? Sometimes your sexual desires can be greater or lesser than what might be viewed as common. The hypothalamus also regulates your anger. So whether your anger is above, which would be aggression, aggressive, or below the anger level, where, you might be viewed a little bit more meek. Yeah? All right. So this is kind of a little bit of just science I thought I'd throw in this morning. We're trying to stay on emotions, mental health, and how does all that fit into neuroscience? And how it fits into neuroscience is what I just gave you. So you have the limbic system, and you have these 4 categories or sub-brain categories that, for the most part, communicate and regulate different emotions. And we went through the different emotions with each one. So when you're feeling overly this or under that, you know where and what part of the brain that's coming from. You know, we have a lot of different personality traits in people, and some of them, the traits become personality disorders. You know, we talked about sexual desire and whether yours is within check or not, or overly aggressive. You know, that can develop into a personality trait, can develop into a personality disorder. Same thing with the anger and aggressiveness or aggression. You know, there's personality traits and there's personality disorders that have to do with that as well. So, interesting stuff to read from the perspective that you get a feel for how the brain processes all of that stuff. And here's the part that's kind of interesting, at least I find it interesting. How do we know it's processing it right? Let's think about that for a second. How do we know it's communicating amongst itself correctly? How do we know that it's given out the right signals within the brain? And again, within the limbic system, we know there's 4 parts of the brain in there. And how do we know that it's given out the right communication for it to be processed and regulated correctly? It's all neuroscience, you guys. It's all neuroscience. And you for the most part, hope that everything is according to Hoyle, right? You hope that everything is processing, communicating, and being regulated correctly. So if you are one of these people or know one of these people where their emotions are on their sleeve, so to speak, or overly stimulated, heightened, or subdued, right? Now you know the process that the brain goes through in order to communicate and regulate those emotions. And that's where personality traits and personalities develop. You know what? It's a pretty cool day today. Hot. I'm assuming when it rains later this afternoon, it's going to cool off. They say, somebody was telling me yesterday, it's going to get like a pretty good sized storm. Some of these cloud heads are pretty high up already. So I don't know. It doesn't look like much of anything's going to happen right now, but that's what the weather report is. Sunday. It's a good day. So you got a little bit of education. We're not going to take up much more of your time. Have fun. Go out and play. Have a good time. And God bless everybody. Take care of one another. And I'll look forward to talking to you all again real soon. See you. Bye.